UK, the nation of nations. A nation that once stood as the epicenter of global trade and industrial innovation. The UK has long been a beacon of economic resilience and ambition. But as we approach the 2030s, troubling signs suggest that the gears of Britain's economy may be grinding to a halt. Housing costs have spiraled out of control, leaving millions struggling to find affordable places to live. The nation's over-reliance on services, particularly financial services concentrated in London, has created a fragile and uneven economic landscape. Meanwhile, escalating public debt, sluggish growth, and an enduring productivity puzzle cast a long shadow over the future. Add to this the soaring cost of living, persistent inflation, and the lingering consequences of Brexit, and it's clear that the cracks in the foundation are widening. The UK's economic challenges are not just numbers on a page. They are reshaping the lives of everyday citizens. Is the UK on a path to economic stagnation, or could this be a turning point for reinvention? In this video, we'll explore why the British economy might stop working in the 2030s and what that could mean for the nation's future. This is the dark side of the UK economy. London, a city of opportunity, culture, and history, but also the epicenter of a deepening housing crisis. This crisis isn't just devastating for residents, it's now harming the economy too. Some Brits say that they are basically a third world country attached to London. Homes are the foundation of all our lives. But for so many Londoners, the dream of a decent, affordable home in London feels impossible. Over 300,000 Londoners are stuck on the social housing waiting list. Meanwhile, private rental prices are skyrocketing, leaving low-income residents behind. And what about buying a home? For most, it's a pipe dream, completely out of reach.
I've just lost hope. I don't see me moving, that's the truth, I don't.
In 2024, the average house price in London soared past £550,000, nearly double the national average of £286,000. For renters, the situation is just as grim. In London, people spend 50% of their income on housing, compared to 35% in other regions, leaving little for essentials or savings. The impacts of London's housing crisis are horrendous. It pushes people into homelessness in record numbers. An estimated one child in every classroom is homeless. It locks people in poverty. It damages their health, their well-being, their ability to take part in society. And we think it's increasingly pushing people out of London, risking our capital becoming just a playground for the rich. London's infrastructure is under immense pressure. As the city's population and economy grow, its aging systems are struggling to keep up. Traffic congestion alone costs the economy £5 billion annually, according to the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Even with recent upgrades, overcrowding on the tube and rail networks remains a daily struggle, reducing productivity and frustrating commuters. The housing crisis isn't just a human tragedy. It's also holding London's economy back. Beneath the city's economic success lies deep inequality. London's Gini coefficient of 0.41 highlights severe income inequality, higher than the UK average of 0.35. Shockingly, over 27% of Londoners live in poverty, despite the city's wealth, as rising living costs and low-paying jobs in non-financial sectors take their toll. Economic inequality of London risks social unrest and undermines long-term growth potential, cautions Torsten Bell of the Resolution Foundation. Economic growth and housing costs are deeply connected. Affordable housing doesn't just help people, it boosts the economy by creating a dynamic, efficient labor market and attracting talent. Thanks to groundbreaking research by NERA using data from the last 20 years, commissioned by City Hall, London Council's Trust for London, and the G15, we now have the data to prove it. When housing costs rise, productivity falls. Specifically, it found that an increase in housing costs by 1% reduces productivity by 0.14%. That might sound small, but across London, the impact is massive. Reducing housing costs by just 1% could deliver £7.3 billion in economic benefits over a decade. The government has made economic growth its top priority, but this report shows that achieving that goal means tackling London's housing crisis head-on. The solution? A once-in-a-generation investment in social housing. Yes, it's expensive, but the economic benefits far outweigh the costs. Research from Shelter shows that building 90,000 social rented homes would add £51.2 billion to the economy. With a housing emergency this severe, the need for action is urgent, not just for Londoners, but for the economic growth the entire country depends on. The UK was the first country to industrialize. Now it's the first country to de-industrialize. It has transitioned from a manufacturing-based economy to one dominated by services. This shift has been ongoing for decades and has shaped the structure and performance of the UK economy. Today, the service sector accounts for 80% of the UK's GDP and employs the vast majority of its workforce. Key industries driving the service economy include finance and business services, retail and tourism, and the growing creative industries. One major reason behind the UK's productivity challenges lies in its heavy reliance on the financial sector, a sector that makes money from money without producing tangible or tradable goods. This dominance drives up the cost of living, makes UK industries less competitive, and diverts young talent into management degrees instead of engineering or other productive fields. This reliance on services also makes the UK economy highly vulnerable to global downturns. For instance, the 2008 financial crisis hit the UK especially hard due to its dependence on financial services. While some service industries are highly productive, others lag behind, contributing to the UK's productivity puzzle. Economic activity is heavily concentrated in hubs like London, creating regional imbalances and disparities in performance. The service sector relies on a highly skilled workforce, but a lack of competitive pay and rising tax burdens is driving talent away. Some Brits say the UK tech companies pay 40% of what you can earn in the US for doing exactly the same job, and they're taxed at a higher rate. They say it's no wonder nobody wants to work here. It's nearly seen as a hostile environment for some talents. Technological advancements, such as automation and artificial intelligence, could disrupt certain service industries and lead to job losses. So if the economy is full of consultants and not manufacturers, how do we expect the economy to perform well in 2030's? Cost of living in the UK has been rising in recent years, putting pressure on household budgets and contributing to financial hardship for many. The average person has never been so poor. Millions of families are struggling financially as living expenses hit the highest levels in more than 4 decades. Over 60% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck, and about 40% earns poverty wages, even after working all their lives. More than a quarter of older people have no savings, and many believe they'll never be able to retire in dignity, while around 55% of elderly people try to survive on an income of less than $25,000 a year.
I'm 54 and my wife and I are very worried about our future. Gas and food prices rising daily. We have had our savings dwindle with the cost of living into the stratosphere, and we are finding it impossible to replace them. We can get by, but can't seem to get ahead. My condolences to anyone retiring in this crisis, 30 years non-stop, just for a crooked system to take all you worked for.
Another UK citizen states,
"My taxes get higher, my food gets expensive, my car becomes harder to maintain. Yet these fops in office have the audacity to tell me they're fixing it. They've been fixing it for 15 years. The only thing they're fixing is their own bank accounts."
Another UK citizen states,
"It is weird that my household income is literally double what it was 10 years ago, and we somehow have less spending money. We no longer have a car payment. We eat out less, we get coffee less. We haven't had credit cards for over 5 years and have no credit card payments. And somehow we have less disposable income now than we did then. No wonder the economy is bad. Just buying the things we need to survive is taking up 95% of our money.
It's clear that it's time for meaningful change to address the UK's rising cost of living and secure a fair future for everyone. As the financial and cultural heart of the United Kingdom, London plays an outsized role in the nation's economic fortunes. While the city remains a global hub for finance, commerce, and innovation, its dominance comes with challenges that exacerbate many of the issues facing the UK economy. Here's how London paradoxically contributes to the very economic problems that threaten the country in the 2030s. According to the ONS, London's GDP per capita is more than double that of regions like the Northeast. Over 60% of venture capital funding in the UK is directed to London-based companies, leaving other cities struggling to attract investment. The UK's over-reliance on London has hollowed out regional economies, stifling innovation and growth outside the capital, says John Van Reenen, economist at the London School of Economics. Take Birmingham, for example. Once a thriving industrial city, it was systematically stripped of its industry, infrastructure investment, and government projects, centralized instead in London. This wasn't an accident, it was policy. Have a look at the West Midlands Plan of 1946, a quote from an article describing it. In 1946, the government commissioned the West Midlands Plan, which attempted to constrain Birmingham's growth. Local government was obliged to achieve a target population of 990,000, lower than its actual 1951 population of 1,113,000. So the government wanted Birmingham to shrink? People would like to move to a more affordable area, but once you leave London, you have less opportunities for work. This is a major issue in the UK, and it seems that it will stay this way until 2030's. The UK has been stuck in a prolonged period of weak economic growth, especially since the 2008 financial crisis. This stagnation is more than just numbers. It affects every aspect of life. Recent forecasts paint a concerning picture for the UK's economy. Growth is expected to slow significantly in the coming years. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research, NIESR, projects GDP growth of 1.2% in 2025, increasing marginally to 1.7% by 2030. However, potential global trade disruptions such as the imposition of tariffs by major economies could reduce growth to a mere 0.4% in the near term. What's behind the UK's sluggish economic growth? One key factor stands out: weak productivity. Without improvements in productivity, it's difficult to achieve sustained increases in output and living standards. The UK's economic struggles aren't just homegrown. They've been magnified by global shocks.
We have rang the alarm bell loud and clear. COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Air raid sirens blared out across the capital.
Full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine that it was imminent. Vladimir Putin called the start of a military special operation, in his words.
The COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine have created significant economic disruptions globally, impacting supply chains, energy prices, and overall economic confidence. These global shocks have further exacerbated the UK's existing economic challenges. But the UK could be the only European country that still blames the pandemic for their current economic situation. If other nations have recovered from the pandemic by now and the UK hasn't, might there be another issue? The UK's national debt is currently around 100% of GDP. The Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, projects that debt will remain high in the coming years. potentially reaching 274% of GDP by the late 2030s. This surge is attributed to increased public spending, particularly in healthcare and pensions, amid an aging population. The Institute for Government projects that maintaining current service levels while meeting demographic pressures would require either increasing taxes by 4% of GDP, cutting non-protected spending by 25%, or some combination of both. High levels of debt limit the government's ability to invest in public services and infrastructure, which are crucial for long-term economic growth. Rising interest rates could also increase the cost of servicing this debt, putting further strain on public finances. To achieve sustainable economic growth, the UK requires an additional £1 trillion in investment over the next decade, focusing on sectors like energy, housing, and venture capital. Current investment levels lag behind those of other G7 nations, necessitating strategic capital allocation to bridge this gap. The UK faces a skills crisis that hampers productivity and economic expansion. A significant portion of the workforce lacks essential qualifications, and vocational training opportunities are insufficient. Addressing this issue is crucial for enhancing productivity and fostering growth. The UK has struggled with weak productivity growth since the 2008 financial crisis. Output per worker has stagnated, lagging behind many other advanced economies. This productivity puzzle is a critical concern, as productivity growth is the primary driver of long-term economic prosperity. According to the Office for National Statistics, ONS, UK productivity growth averaged just 0.3% per year between 2008 and 2019, compared to an average of 2.3% in the preceding decade. Several factors contribute to this slowdown, including underinvestment in research and development, R&D, skills shortages, and a lack of business dynamism. Without a significant improvement in productivity, the UK's potential for economic growth will be severely limited, impacting living standards and public finances. Another issue is that the UK's population is aging. The ONS projects that the number of people aged 65 and over will increase significantly in the coming decades, while the working-age population will grow at a slower rate. An aging population puts pressure on public services, particularly healthcare and pensions. It also reduces the supply of labor, potentially leading to labor shortages and wage inflation. Inflation in the UK surged in 2022 and peaked at 11.1% in October 2022, the highest level in 41 years. Despite recent efforts to control inflation, financial markets remain skeptical about the Bank of England's ability to maintain long-term price stability. Market expectations suggest that UK inflation could persist above target levels, potentially exceeding 3% in the long run. So what's driving the inflation? The war in Ukraine has had a significant impact on global energy markets, leading to sharp increases in gas and electricity prices. This has had a knock-on effect on prices across the economy, as energy is a key input for many businesses. A period of strong consumer demand following the pandemic, coupled with supply constraints, has also contributed to rising prices. High inflation has several negative consequences for the UK economy. Inflation erodes the purchasing power of consumers, meaning that people can buy less with the same amount of money. This puts pressure on household budgets and reduces living standards. High inflation can lead to demands for higher wages to compensate for the rising cost of living. This can create a wage price spiral, where rising wages lead to further price increases. High inflation creates uncertainty for businesses and consumers, making it more difficult to plan for the future. This can lead to reduced investment and economic activity. The Bank of England has been raising interest rates to try to bring inflation back to its 2% target. Higher interest rates can increase borrowing costs for businesses and consumers, potentially slowing economic growth.
As Chief Counting Officer for the referendum on the UK's membership of the European Union, held on the 23rd of June 2016,
electorate has taken the historic decision to withdraw from the European Union after more than 40 years.
Brexit continues to cast a long shadow over the UK economy. By 2035, studies estimate that Brexit will result in 5% lower exports, 16% lower imports, and a staggering £311 billion economic shortfall compared to remaining in the EU. Over 7,000 financial services jobs and £1.3 trillion in assets have moved to EU financial hubs like Frankfurt and Paris since Brexit, undermining London's dominance. The UK's reliance on London's finance sector, which contributes 10% of GDP, leaves the economy exposed to global market volatility. London's financial sector is too big to fail and too big to save. The city's dominance makes the UK economy dangerously unbalanced, warns Danny Blanchflower, a former Bank of England policymaker. UK trade with the EU has declined since the end of the transition period. The ONS reports significant decreases in both imports from and exports to the EU. The variety of goods exported from the UK to the EU has also decreased, suggesting that smaller businesses are struggling with new trade barriers. New customs checks, regulatory divergence, and rules of origin requirements have increased costs and complexities for businesses trading with the EU. This has particularly affected smaller businesses that lack the resources to navigate complex customs procedures. Uncertainty surrounding Brexit has likely contributed to lower business investment in the UK. Some businesses may have relocated operations or investments to the EU to maintain access to the single market. The convergence of these challenges, sluggish growth, escalating debt, investment deficits, skill shortages, inflation concerns, and the enduring impact of Brexit poses significant risks to the UK's economic stability in the 2030s. The UK's economy faces serious structural challenges that could culminate in a perfect storm during the 2030s. However, these challenges are not insurmountable. Key policy priorities should include comprehensive pension reform to ensure long-term sustainability, increased investment in productivity-enhancing infrastructure and skills, housing market reforms to improve affordability, rebuilding international trade relationships, and fiscal consolidation while protecting key public services. The window for addressing these challenges is narrowing. Without significant policy action and structural reforms, the UK risks entering a period of prolonged economic stagnation or crisis in the 2030s.